Hi, and welcome, everybody. Sorry for being a minute late, dealing with a couple technical things as well. Hopefully you guys can all see us now and this is working better. I'm Meg Seifert. I'm the executive director at Headwaters Science Institute and super happy to be hosting this exciting event with Will Richardson from TINS. And this is in collaboration with Headwaters and SLOPA. And so I'm going to first introduce Alec Atkin. He is the board president at Headwaters Science Institute.
Thank you, Meg. As Meg said, I'm the president of the board of Headwaters Science Institute. I'm also a member of the Serene Lakes Property Owner Association. At Headwaters, we foster curiosity through science education. We work with kids in elementary schools through high school. We have programs where we supplement school science programs. Headwaters also runs science camps, and I think for many years now, I don't know how many, we've been running one out of the lot one of Serene Lakes, and it's always been a very popular camp. My kids worked there this summer and really enjoyed that. And we also mentor students who are interested in doing research projects and getting published. And lastly, we have our really great program, Lunch with a Scientist, where we had Dr. Will Richardson talk a while ago. I'd like to thank SLOPA for co-sponsoring this event. You know, you've been a really great partner with Headwaters, and we really appreciate your support. And I would also like to thank Dr. Will Richardson for leading this talk today. So thank you.
Thanks, Alec. And we have Sandy James on from the Serene Lakes group, and I'd like to introduce her so she can talk about Serene.
Yes, thank you all for being here. And again, I'm Sandy Holbrook James. I'm actually the president of SLOPA, and we have been trying to host more talks, so to speak, just to educate our community about what's going on within and outside our community. And really excited to have Meg and Alec and Will here, and especially Will to share his talk tonight. And again, just thank you. And thanks to our stewardship committee to help put this night together. And I'm going to let Meg lead us through. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. We're super happy to have this collaboration with Serene to do these Lakeside chats in the summer. They've been live, and now we're trying some winter versions where they'll be virtual. And so hopefully tonight everyone has had a chance to see Will's Lunch with a Scientist talk that he did actually during COVID. And then, you know, that'll have given you a little bit of background. He's going to give an update on some things he's done since then, and we'll open it up to some question and answers. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Dr. Will Richardson from TINS, and he can tell us more about the great work he did. And thank you, Sandy and Alec. Okay, so Will, you're live, and yeah. Thank you for being here. We're so excited to have you. I always love hearing about your research and all the great things you're doing at TINS.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And I've been feverishly deleting parts of my presentation to try to get it small enough to show. And I think I finally got it uploaded. Let's see what happens here.
Here, I'll go ahead and add it to the stream, and I can hop out. There you go. I can see your slides.
Okay, so I can just advance from here then, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks, Will.
Great. Well, thanks so much. So, excuse me. Shannon asked me to do a follow-up from the previous Lunch with a Scientist talk that I gave, I guess, in 2020, so almost 3 years ago, because it was like May or something, and was curious to know more about some of the rabbit stuff. So that's what I'm going to talk about. But First, so my name's Will. I am the executive director of the Tahoe Institute for Natural Science. We are a research, education, and outreach organization. That last slide doesn't exist. This is a long-term goal to bring a world-class interpretive nature center to the region. And in the meantime, our three main program areas are education. So like Headwaters, we do all kinds of different supplemental science curricula with school-age kids. We also do summer camps as well, and lots of in-school programs, lots of field trips. We take our education out to the public in the form of slideshow presentations like this, but also lots of mostly free interpretive natural history outings, lots of bird walks, lots of wildflower walks, that sort of thing, and participate in most of the festivals around here. We do some help out with in nature interpretation for other organizations as well. I know the Land Trust is apparently on here. Here's our Lake Ella signage that we helped out with. But a lot of what we do is research, and I guess all my animations have disappeared as part of this transfer. So that looks like a humongous mess. I'll just skip beyond that. Anyway, we do lots of different types of research, and hopefully some of you guys had a chance to either see a few years ago or click on the link and watch the YouTube video of the talk that I did a few years ago. I talked just about three different areas of our research that I thought would be pretty interesting for the kids, and talked about tiger beetles, Swainson's thrush, and montane rabbits. So again, I'm going to follow up on montane rabbits today. Why they are interesting is a handful of reasons. Why they need attention, but in part is because they haven't gotten enough attention. They hold keystone positions in shaping vegetation structure, both just purely structurally, but also floristically, and then also, really important as prey items for mid and larger size predators. So a big one is Sierra Nevada red fox. That's of great interest to a lot of folks, and just about 30 days ago, there was a press release out about discovery of Sierra Nevada red fox being seen on camera traps around Taboose Pass. 4 incidents of 3 different camera traps down there, and they had been seen in that area in something like 90 years. And if we're going to have Sierra Nevada red fox, if we're going to have wolverines, if we're going to have gray foxes and goshawks and bobcats and lions, they need something to eat, and they really need something to eat through the winter. And rabbits stay active through the winter. It's a pretty good-sized prey item, and so they're a really important part of that predator-prey relationship. Another interesting thing about rabbits is they make lots of new rabbits. So you may have seen this sort of graphic in an old ecology textbook or biology textbook, where you have this 1, maybe 2-year lag of this cyclic population that you can have in snowshoe hare, and then the lynx population follows shortly behind. Species here at Tahoe are, in terms of montane rabbits, we have Nuttall's cottontail, snowshoe hare. Occasionally we get a few black-tailed jackrabbits and white-tailed jackrabbit. So in my talk a few years ago, I really focused on white-tailed jackrabbits, and that's something I'm still very interested in, and continue to work with. Many people may not have any idea that we have this thing called a white-tailed jackrabbit. It looks a lot like a snowshoe hare, but much, much bigger. And something that I'm really interested in is trying to figure out if they have indeed disappeared from Desolation Wilderness. So I'll let you go back and watch that other talk if you haven't. But in the meantime, I have been trying to determine if in fact they have disappeared. I don't know if you can see my cursor. I'm guessing maybe not this way, but you see this big gap in distribution here, but around Echo Pass. So all these red dots, you see a couple of yellow dots in the bottom of that satellite image. Those are near Dick's Peak, where James Moffett took a bunch of photos in like 1939, and in Robert Orr's book on rabbits of California, he uses those images as demonstration of white-tailed jackrabbit habitat. But it's unclear if they actually saw white-tailed jackrabbits there or not. If that was just supposed to be, illustrative of what the habitat looks like. And it was like also around Velma Lakes too. But so I've gone to Cal Academy now and tried to look through their old journals, both James Moffett and Robert Orr, and haven't been able to get a clear answer. It's kind of amusing. I did find lots of tic-tac-toe games and all kinds of really interesting stuff in there, but so that still remains a bit of a mystery. So I'm trying to continue to determine if they have in fact disappeared from Desolation over the last 100 years, or if maybe they weren't there. We just don't know. So, and then if they did disappear, why, right? Another issue with rabbits that makes them worth paying attention to right now in particular is this new arrival of a new strain of rabbit hemorrhagic disease. This is a super contagious, incredibly lethal disease that affects rabbits and hares and pika of all species. And thankfully, when it does strike, the animals tend to die within just a couple of days. So that helps damp down the spread of it. But it showed up just a couple years ago in the southwestern U.S. and it spread really quickly, and so lower elevation counties throughout California have been hit all the way up, through Sacramento, and just about a year ago, they found an endangered riparian brush rabbit as part of the San Joaquin River National Wildlife Refuge population, and that was confirmed to have died from this disease. So this could get up into the mountains, and it affects domestic rabbits and wild rabbits equally badly. So it'd be good to know baseline distributions of everything. So towards this end, I am TINS is trying to spearhead an effort to get a montane rabbit working group together. And the goal here is to form a network of stakeholders who can all get together to work on issues related around conservation of these montane rabbits. So we want to, be able to share resources, basically know who's interested, and all communicate as much as possible, and collaborate. Get together and identify all the knowledge gaps. So I showed that graph of snowshoe hare and lynx. Those data are super old from Hudson Bay Company fur records from 150 years ago or something. But those population cycles in snowshoe hare have been demonstrated throughout much of the range of snowshoe hare. We have no idea if snowshoe hare experience population cycles like that in the Sierra Nevada. So that'd be a great thing to know, right? There's so much basic stuff we don't know about both white-tailed jackrabbits and snowshoe hares. Just their baseline spatial distributions, their habitat associations, what really are the predator-prey relationships, And I'll get into conservation genetics a little later. But we want to kind of identify and prioritize, and then promote, any conservation concerns. We need to develop standardized monitoring protocols. People have been looking at snowshoe hare populations for a couple centuries, and things have changed, and there's better ways of doing things, and we can use technology and what we've learned to try to all get on the same page and apply this broadly. And then, of course, finding funding to support all this work. And the goal would be to focus on this genus of jackrabbits and snowshoe hares in the Sierra Nevada primarily. I'm open to extending this further north in California to the Oregon snowshoe hare. It'll just be up to the group to decide, if we want to do that or not. Both subspecies of snowshoe hare are considered species of special concerns, or subspecies of special concern in the state of California. Okay, excuse me. Let's talk about Nuttall's cottontail for a minute. I did mention cottontail expansion just a little bit in my last talk, and this is a species that is restricted to east of the Sierra Nevada. Mostly lives in kind of sagebrush, open brushy habitat, but also can be found in riparian a little bit. And then it gets right up to the mountaintops. You may recall seeing some comparison photos of white-tailed jackrabbits and Nuttall's cottontails up on Job's Sister, at like over 10,000 feet elevation. In 2001, the Lake Tahoe watershed assessment that was put out by Region 5 of the Forest Service thought that maybe cottontail should be considered a species of special concern within Tahoe, because they were really just restricted to the Carson Range, just kind of high rocky sagebrush habitats in the Carson Range, on the east side of the lake. But right around that same time, they were starting to come down out of the mountains across suburbia and expand all over the place. So, excuse me. So here's a figure to kind of, I don't know if you can, again, I don't know if you can see my cursor. I'm going to assume not. But on the right side of Lake Tahoe, you've got the Carson Range. And historically, that is where cottontails were found, mostly high elevation along the ridge lines of the Carson Range. There is one specimen record from Crystal Bay over at Incline from, I can't remember now, 1972 or 1976 or something like that. And so historically, I think it seems that they would come down to lower elevations and pop down into neighborhoods and reach lake level, but they were absolutely never seen, on the West Shore or elsewhere on the North Shore or South Lake. And then in around 2000, they started to spread quite rapidly westward across both North and South Lake at the same time. And they were using that wildland urban interface. So here, this figure is showing a bunch of data points. There's a white one at the bottom, kind of at the parking lot of Heavenly, that's from 1999. But all the others are from 2000 and 2001 to 2019. And that's what the numbers refer to. The yellow ones are the first 5 years of that. Orange is 2005 through 2010. Red is 2010 through 2014, and then 2015 to 2019 is in kind of purple. And so you can see how they kind of made their way across that wildland urban interface. By about 2010, they'd reached Tahoe City. By 2008, they were up into Christmas Valley. And then they started to go down the West Shore. By 2016, they'd close the loop. And then just a couple years ago, 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago now, there's actually one deep into desolation, which is pretty wild. They seem to be continuing their expansion left to the west. So I'm working with a landscape ecologist to try to figure out what led to this massive range expansion. It's so quick. And, we've looked at a lot of things so far: weather, climate. We've looked at some thinning practices that happened and maybe some key spots in terms of fuels thinning may have opened up the habitat for them to make a run for it, as well as fires. It seems like they've made pretty big pulses in the wake of the Gondola fire, the Angora fire, and maybe some others. But we haven't found like a slam dunk explanation just yet. So that's something we're still working on. I'd be really curious to know if anybody ever sees cottontails up at Serene Lakes. I have to think not, but I've been seeing cottontails getting up into Carpenter Valley, and I'm not sure if they're in Ewer Valley, but they're really high at Tahoe Donner in a few spots, and so maybe they're expanding west across just the whole region. And so if anybody listening out there has seen cottontails and has anything to say about that, I'd love to know.
Yeah, anyone could add that in the comments. And, we can also take more of that in the question and answer time. But yeah, if you've seen that, would love to know.
So with the cottontails, another interesting thing. So it's about 2000 that they were starting to make their move, through the wildland urban interface. Shortly thereafter, we got our very first gray fox in the Lake Tahoe Basin. And so this is a photo from the Carson Range in 2005. And since that time, gray foxes have gotten not quite common, but we're seeing a lot more gray foxes. So clearly they have adapted to Tahoe and are taking advantage of something that's there. And presumably the cottontails have a lot to do with that. Also, we're seeing a lot more bobcats, it seems. Now, part of the time, I just wonder if, everybody having a phone with a camera on it in their hands or in their pocket at all times is maybe part of that. And social media, we're just seeing more sharing of these images, of bobcats and gray fox. And also we've got, Ring cameras on people's doorbell and stuff like that. So that may be part of it, but it does seem that bobcat numbers are up as well. So that's all probably in part due to the cottontail expansion. All right, another species I've been working with a lot more lately is snowshoe hare. So this is in the genus Lepus again, so it's kind of medium-sized forest hare. They really like dense conifers, and they'll use riparian habitat too, but they like dense cover. People don't see them very often. And again, we have two subspecies in Tahoe. The subspecies line is right around sage hen, give or take. So like anything north of Sierra Valley is going to be Clamithensis, and anything around Donner and south of that is Tahoensis. In the last few years, I've been doing repeat surveys. Keenan Morrison, this was part of John Keene's PhD dissertation. He did wildlife inventories at a whole bunch of California state parks in the Tahoe region 30 plus years ago now. And we have been revisiting the stations for those inventories for both snowshoe hare is how it started. And then we've also been doing breeding bird counts now to follow up as well. So we started off with looking at Burton Creek State Park and Sugar Pine Point State Park over the previous couple years. And now moving forward, we're going to do Bliss, Angora, and Donner as well. And again, this is mostly, these surveys are pellet counts. Now, from the, I mentioned that, with this expansion of cottontails, looking at pellets alone can't necessarily tell you what species you have. You may remember that we encountered a few black-tailed jackrabbits with our white-tailed jackrabbit study. And so, if we've got pellets kind of in the snowshoe hare cottontail size range, we don't necessarily know for sure if those are snowshoe hare pellets. And so I've also been putting cameras out to try to get confirming evidence of the animals in question. And you may remember from that other talk, I didn't complain. I talked about all the complications and hardships of trying to do field work in the winter with cameras that keep getting buried, and that is still the case. You may have noticed we're getting a pretty good winter here, and so the other week I had to dig down about 5 feet to get a camera out. That's just part of the deal. Another complication with this particular study is that they just laid this grid of 300 meter by 300 meter points on the landscape with no, just using a tape measure basically. And so it's definitely a bit of a hassle to try to travel that way, to get around that way, just going in straight lines, no matter what the terrain does. But also, this is kind of pre-GPS. So these points were laid out, back in 1991, and they would tack up a little tree tag and throw some white spray paint around the tree. And that was that. And then so all I have to work off are these hand-drawn topo maps. And so I'm trying to find these stations that have just been sitting out there for 30 years. And needless to say, the spray paint has faded quite a bit. In a lot of cases, the trees have grown to where the tree tag is kind of gone. But, that's not that. The paint's way easier to see than the tag. But in 30 years, a lot of trees just die and fall over. Or in the case of this one way over on the right, you see that orange strip of paint there. So that tree, that was one of the marker trees that I found. And then it got marked for removal. And the very next year, that tree was gone. So I'm having pretty good luck finding a lot of the stations, but with a lot, maybe half or more, honestly, I'm just going off the topo map and doing my best. And again, we're looking for pellets. We're looking for telltale sign of that reddish or orange urine, and then the tracks. With the white-tailed jackrabbit, you may recall that they gallop. They have a galloping gait, and so their hind legs on the overstep. You note here's a great look at an overstep where those long rabbit feet come over the front legs as they move forward. And in a snowshoe hare, they put the hind legs down together at the same time, almost always. And so it's pretty faint, but you should see the bigger hind feet are side by side there in that track photo. So just some results. So for a little over half of the stations, no pellets were detected. So no snowshoe hares were detected in either 30 years ago nor now. And then some varying percentages of stations where they were only seen 30 years ago, maybe around 15 to 25% there. Around a little under 15% of the stations only had pellets when I was there, and then a varying amount, depending on which state park, had snowshoe hares persisting across that whole span. So that's good, but it raises the questions of, for those stations where they were only seen 30 years ago, what has changed on the landscape there? And for stations where I was able to find pellets, but they didn't 30 years ago, what has changed there? So that's what we need to look into next is, those sort of landscape effects. I don't know if my next slide will, oh, it does. Okay. So I did find a few cottontail pellets right next to communities. So that is interesting. Obviously, Keene didn't find any 30 years ago. They weren't there. But so next we'll finish sampling at the other parks, and then really start to dig in to examine the effects of habitat change. So, these are in these state parks. Same with the Forest Service. They're in there doing fuels treatments. They are doing controlled burns. So there's a lot of thinning, there's controlled burns. And then where they have left things untouched, in some cases, you get quite a bit of increasing cover density. Sometimes patches of the forest will open up, and then you get a bit of a colonization event with lots of young conifers coming up really thick. The hares love that. And I've seen really hard habitat edges where you will have pellets inside the cover that they like, and then it just stops, and you'll find nothing on the edge of that. And so where you've had a fuels treatment or a controlled burn, or where you get one of these thickets of new growth coming up, that's where you can see like lots of pellets on one side and 0 pellets on the other. And unfortunately, we don't have good spatial data to look at that using like GIS, but hoping to go back in and take more precise measurements with all that vegetation data and look at that more closely. So that's part of what's next. I mentioned conservation genetics at towards the very beginning. Is it something we're interested in? And this is actually, I mentioned also in my last talk about how the only way we could tell black-tailed jackrabbit and white-tailed jackrabbit pellets apart for sure was to do conservation genetics analysis on it and basically look at the mitochondrial DNA. And we confirmed that we did have some black-tailed jackrabbits, but we threw a bunch of all kinds of pellets in there from our rabbit species, and it was fascinating that all of what we thought were snowshoe hare pellets came back basically as black-tailed jackrabbit mitochondrial DNA. This is DNA that's passed down on the female line, and this was super interesting for a number of reasons. We were wondering, is there a lot of introgressive hybridization going on? Rabbits aren't the most discriminating when it comes to picking partners to try to reproduce with. And that can lead to a lot of hybridization, which can kind of stabilize and then it can get all mixed up. And you see this in the genus Lepus, which is, snowshoe hares and jackrabbits, and those, Alaska hares. And anyway, you see this in those species across the genus in Mongolia and the Iberian Peninsula and just all over the world. This has been found. And so, it wasn't the most jarring thing, but you wonder, is this a new thing? Is this climate change bringing black-tailed jackrabbits into contact with snowshoe hares? Is it possibly a cryptic species? All kinds of things are possible. So we got really excited about that. And just about the time we were starting to dig in, a couple of papers from Ellen Chang came out. And she had looked at snowshoe hare genetics across the whole continent. And what she found was that, yes, every snowshoe hare south of Seattle basically has black-tailed jackrabbit mitochondrial DNA, which was nice to have that confirmed. Definitely, scooped us on the discovery there, but she'd been working on this and her team for like 25 years. But the most interesting thing to come out of this paper was that snowshoe hare occurs in these sort of peninsular range extensions down the Cascade Sierra, down the Rockies, down the Appalachian, and it's out towards the bottom of these peninsulas of the range where you've got the greatest genetic diversity. So from a biodiversity point of view, kind kind of everything up top in the boreals all mixing around. But as you go south, you actually have more more genetic differentiation and greater diversity, and so that should be, you know, the parts that are of most concern for preserving biodiversity. And she didn't get that far in California. She sampled down to, I think, about Lassen, and so everything further down in the Sierra Nevada proper hasn't really been addressed. And so we would expect to see something similar with white-tailed jackrabbits. So we would love to be able to take a good look at, there's a whole suite of conservation genetics issues that kind of pop up from that. And so been talking with Ben Sachs at UC Davis about this for a number of years, and we just need to find some money so we can pay a grad student to go for it on this topic. Okay, so that's kind of the main stuff that we've been up to since the last talk. And I guess sorry I couldn't show you my fun clips, but I've probably gone a little long anyway. And so we go for questions.
Yeah.
From here, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I wanted to, that was great. I really appreciate you updating us. And we did have a few people write in some comments about things they've seen in Serene. So I thought I'd start with that before we moved on to questions. So can you see, we had Jane who said they think they had a cottontail living under their cabin in Serene.
Super cool. I'm very surprised, but okay. I guess the follow-up question. So it seems like some of y'all have found some cottontails at Serene. Is this a new phenomenon in the last 10, 20 years, or do any longtime residents know of cottontails that have been there forever? That would be the next question.
Yeah, and so Donna also thought she'd seen one, and then Alec here said he had a snowshoe hare that showed up next to his cabin. And it stayed there for a couple hours. And
Let's stop presenting, I guess.
Oh yeah, you can stop if you want. I can pull your, I think I can pull your slides out. There we go. Yeah. And then Alec had a follow-up question to his snowshoe hare, which was, since there isn't much exposed vegetation in Serene with 8 feet of snow, what would the snowshoe hare that he spotted be eating?
Yeah, they're kind of like our sooty grouse. They're going after the buds and basically everything that's out on the tips of the twigs and stuff. They like they'll if they in a riparian context they'll get into aspen, and they love willows, but they just eat like pine twigs. Which sounds awful to me, but they get through with that.
And then Sandy's on. I think you said you had one too.
Yeah, I just want to add, we definitely have one. I see the prints every day. I don't see droppings, but I'd have this might be a too basic question, but I'm pretty naive with this realm. Do all of them change color? Because the one that we have definitely changes color. Would that definitely be a cottontail, or do all species change?
Great question. So it's half and half. So I mentioned the 4 species, and so the cottontail and the black-tailed jackrabbit does not change color. The snowshoe hare and the white-tailed jackrabbit, they turn white. They do change color.
So the one I have changes color, so that means it's not a cottontail.
So that's a snowshoe hare.
So it's a snowshoe hare. Wow.
Yeah, and so snowshoe hares, you really don't see any tail at all on them. It just kind of just a round butt basically. And then on the cottontail, you should see a very discreet, puffy white
cottontail.
Yeah, it looks like they've got a little cotton ball.
But the prints that we see, like I see a ton around our cabin. I see a ton in Serene, and then like if I'm skiing, whether it's Nordic skiing or alpine skiing at Sugar Bowl, and on you see prints I see them all the time, and they look like pretty traditional prints, the the one in the front and the two in the back. So that would not be the
So a lot of mammals, when they're bounding through the snow, they have that overstep where the front feet go down and then the hind feet kind of come over to make the next track. And so I've been confused myself. I sometimes, like, Douglas squirrel tracks can look like rabbit tracks, but they're squirrel tracks. So
I was wondering if they would be squirrel, but they look very much like rabbit just because the back is so prominent.
Yeah, that pattern. So Douglas squirrels definitely do that when they're bounding through snow that's kind of hanging them up. Yeah. So I'd have to probably see the tracks, I guess, to want to.
Right. But I think there's a lot more than we realize in Serene and on the summit. Just an observation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so.
Yeah. So to add to that, people say if they can get a photo, or maybe if they find droppings or footprints or any of those things, what should they do? Should they contact you? Should they
email it to me? Sure. I don't know.
What's your email, Will?
It's Will at.
Put it in the chat.
tinsweb.org. Oh, that's the private chat here.
Here. Yeah. If you can't put it in the public one, I can.
Oh, I can. I was on the wrong thing.
Okay.
I'll take all your rabbit photos and questions.
Yeah, and we've had a couple more questions come in. Dr. Andrea Peoples Marwar was asking if Nuttall's cottontail previously shown expansion in additionally densely populated regions other than what you've investigated, and are they a shy species?
Yes, they're not that shy. I have 4 in my yard. So they're clearly highly adaptable. I think it depends on your vegetation and all that kind of stuff. They can habituate to living in suburbia pretty well. But as far as shown expansion in additionally densely populated regions, I assume you mean populated by people. I haven't seen that. I've been trying to see if I've looked down in Mammoth and then I've looked across Sierra Valley. They've gotten more gray foxes, but nobody could quite tell me what's going on with the rabbits. They have expanded their range elsewhere, just in the wild. They've expanded up. I can't remember if it's from Washington State up into Canada, or if it's Oregon up into Washington across the Columbia somehow. I can't remember but there have been some other some minor incursions and expansions elsewhere in their range, but not very well documented.
Okay, thank you. We have one from John Coburn asking if the Nuttall's cottontail now common in the northern part of Minden in the Carson Valley.
So they've probably always been pretty common there, but one thing that I'm not certain about is Audubon's cottontail, or the desert cottontail, how long they've been around, like Carson Valley and Reno, because they're definitely there also. And you got to look really closely to tell those two apart. Desert cottontail's got longer ears proportionally, but otherwise they're very similar. And so I think Nuttall's cottontail in Carson Valley. So it probably depends a little bit which side of the valley. West side of the valley, where it's all lush and pasture, probably always been Nuttall's cottontail. The desert cottontail, I mean, as you head up and east out of Carson Valley, it gets pretty dry. And I don't know if that's always been just the realm of Nuttall's, or if desert's been there all along as well. But they're there now, so we have both.
Yeah, and then We've had a few questions about, do the coyotes in the area mostly eat rabbit around Serene?
Whatever they can catch. Yeah, but certainly take advantage of rabbits.
And then also, can the foxes and coyotes share territories?
Foxes are really good at working around other large canids, but coyotes aren't that large. And so where there are wolves, then that keeps the coyotes down, and then the foxes do great. There's sort of this like, picking on the smaller guy thing, and coyotes and foxes are, they're definitely different, different sizes, but and all three can coexist, but it's tense. And so yes, they can absolutely overlap. Foxes and coyotes can overlap territories, especially gray fox. So gray fox, they can climb trees, and unlike the Sierra Nevada red fox.
Sweet. And then John said that he was surprised to see that the cottontail and white-tailed jackrabbits are open for hunting throughout Nevada. And is this also true in California? Do you know anything about the hunting?
So I don't believe white-tailed jackrabbits are, because they're a species of special concern. There's a few other species of cottontails in California as well. There's a brush rabbit, which is doing pretty good through much of its range. I mentioned the endangered riparian brush rabbit, so it's like right there in the delta. That subspecies is not doing very well at all. So you can't hunt those. I don't know about desert cottontails. I imagine probably, and then Nuttall's cottontail is really widespread and abundant in like the northeast corner of the state, like Modoc, and there's just tons and tons of them. And in the right kind of habitats down in Inyo County and Mono County as well. You would need to be really careful in certain parts of Mono County. There's also pygmy rabbits there, which are very much endangered. So, yeah, I don't know much about rabbit hunting, honestly, because it's just doesn't happen around here.
Okay,
which I'm okay with.
And then, are there benefits to the ecosystems that the rabbits are expanding to?
Yeah, so they're extremely impactful, and it depends on your perspective a little bit. So if you are a delicious plant, maybe the benefits aren't so readily apparent. However, if you're interested in having a lot of mid and large size carnivores, then there are enormous benefits. Like we mentioned, if we're talking about the cottontail expansion, so I think that's probably bringing us more bobcats and more gray foxes, able to be part of that system. An unknown is how the cottontails and snowshoe hares might be interacting. They really don't overlap in habitat too much, because the snowshoe hares like it to, they like it dense, and the cottontails like it pretty open or more like edge mixed. But they're clearly bumping into one another, and what happens when they do, I don't know.
Okay. And then Shandon is asking, what is the possibility of Donner Summit becoming habitat for white-tailed jackrabbit?
Well, so slim. So white-tailed jackrabbit likes it really open. So they like, around Tahoe, you really only see them about 8,500 feet and above. Now I could go into a ton of detail about white-tailed jackrabbits, but that was the other talk. But they like it really open, wide open habitats. And so, mountaintops and high ridges and things like that. And so Donner, I think, is just too heavily wooded, in the same way that I think Echo might be serving as a barrier between Carson Pass is, that wide open kind of high Great Basin-y feeling terrain, loaded with white-tailed jackrabbits still. Desolation's got a bit of that, but they're not there. And so, but there's a lot of forest between those two, and that might be serving as a kind of a hostile matrix that they'd have to get across, and they just aren't able to, perhaps.
And then I'll let Sandy ask her own question.
I was just curious about habitat, particularly here in Serene, because I've had people share that, oh, we have rabbits like living under a storage area, under a cabin. And then I'm always curious because I know we have a rabbit that's been living here for quite a while, a few years. And I'm just like, is he or she living in the tree well? Are they actually living somewhere under a cabin? Like, where's their typical habitat at this time of year?
Yeah. It's kind of hard to say. So the snowshoe hares will burrow a little bit, and yeah, they like to kind of go dig down in and find cover. And so if you think about how snow, it's easy to think about the subnivean, the landscape under the snow as just like this uniform blanket, but really there's lots of nooks and crannies, and the vegetation that the snow's falling on is creating a ton of interstitial space. There's a lot of structural pockets and things like that. And so, yeah, tree wells, if you think about like alder and willow, when the snow falls on that and it bends over, well, it's creating almost like a roof structure, and there's tons of space often for critters to be running around under there. So even just in my backyard, some of the shrubs and stuff, I've got 3 or 4 cottontails from this summer's crop still hanging around, and yeah, they're getting under the shed and a couple other structural spots, but I've seen them like pop out of pockets in the snow where there's just holes under there. One of the photos that I showed earlier I took I have a maple over my side yard, and it's all bent over, and he was just sticking his face out of a little hole that it had made there.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Kevin was interested to know about your camera traps and what's your method to retrieve those in the summer if they're so high off the ground.
Thanks for asking, Kevin. Yeah, I don't leave them out there all winter. I leave them out for like a week at a time, and so it's a constant, adjustment of moving them to new locations, and. Yeah, so the one that I had to dig down like 5 feet to, that had been out since basically Halloween. That one had been kind of neglected, so I had to find the time to go dig that one out. But yeah, it's always a challenge to find them, and I need to do a better job of maybe putting some flagging so I can mark which tree they were on. With the snowshoe, with the white-tailed jackrabbits, with both of these, it's been a real challenge to go into a completely new landscape. Like after we've gotten a bunch of snow, you don't recognize the trees anymore. I think it was in this clump, but the clump's gone, and so everything gets buried. So it's a challenge. The hardest part is just finding them, and then trying to look at the weather. So this weather's been, I haven't really gotten much done this season yet, to be honest, because I need about a 5-day window post measurable snowfall before I want to go out and try to look for pellets. It doesn't do me any good to go out and look for pellets if we got a couple inches of snow the previous night, right? So I need some time for the rabbits to move around and leave sign for me to find. And so we've had a lot of snow, and then my schedule just hasn't really freed up this last open break we've had.
Yeah, and so Pam was wondering if anyone in the chat, so if you guys do have wildlife cameras, I think people would like to to know. And I'm sure if you have good pictures, Will would love you to share what you found. And then Wendy was asking about do we have winter white fur martins in the Serene area?
Great question. So we have 7 species of weasels around Tahoe. So going from largest to smallest, that includes the wolverine, which I guess we haven't seen since 2018. I think that's right, February 18. River otter, badgers, and then marten. So, and marten don't turn white. They can be kind of blondie, but they're pretty much sandy brown, maybe a little paler on the throat and chest. And they're really arboreal. They run around in trees and eat squirrels mostly, and they like talus. They like a few different environments and habitat types, but they're not aquatic, and they don't turn white. But then going down smaller, we have mink, which are like chocolate brown and are highly aquatic. And then we have long-tailed weasel, which do turn white and are very widespread all over the place. And then we have what was until recently known as the short-tailed weasel. It's got a new name now. It's the American stoat. And they are our smallest, and they also turn white. And both the long-tailed weasel and the stoat, basically just a tube of mane with a little 2 pair of black beady eyes and a black tip on the tail in the wintertime, and just pure white otherwise. And
I've seen them around here. That's really fun when you see them, because you just kind of, especially if it's really snowy out, you just see the black tail kind of go by.
Yep. Yeah. And so both species that turn white, and they're quite widespread and common. So you probably have both long-tailed and weasel and American stoats around Serene.
And then Jack was wondering, is there any indication of snowshoe or white-tailed moving upslope to take advantage of the windswept areas exposing foliage?
Jack, that is an awesome question. So snowshoe hares don't really move much at all. They're pretty resident. They just kind of stay put where they are. White-tailed jackrabbits definitely do move, and it depends where you are. Depends where they are as far as their migratory strategies. So around Carson Pass, where they're pretty far removed from any good low elevation stuff. I mean, Hope Valley just fills up with snow. So most of the the white-tailed jackrabbits in that area, they go uphill, they go upslope and congregate. And exactly, so they'll hang out on windswept ridges, and especially kind of south side, southwest side, where the wind and the sun can kind of cook off that. And they love granite gilia and phlox and cream bush and sagebrush and all those kinds of plants that you find up there. Now, if they're within pretty easy striking distance of lower elevation, they go down. And so along the Carson Range on the east side of Lake Tahoe, a lot of those white-tailed jackrabbits will just kind of pop up and over and go down to the foothills of the Carson Valley. And you see that all along the eastern escarpment of the Sierra Nevada. So white-tailed jackrabbits from near Tioga Pass might pop all the way down to Mono Lake in the wintertime. Whereas if they're way up there, then they just might head up. So you can find white-tailed jackrabbits. You can find white-tailed jackrabbits at like 13,000 feet through the high Sierra. They're really good mountaineers, impressive. And some of those will go up and around to the south and west to find that vegetation.
Sweet. And now I have a question about Native Americans. Did they eat any specific kinds of these rabbits, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know. So rabbit drives were a thing in the Great Basin. going after jackrabbits. And historically, white-tailed jackrabbit was the dominant jackrabbit in the northern half of the Great Basin before all the cattle kind of changed the landscape from perennial bunch grasses to sagebrush and cheatgrass and annuals. So now it's mostly black-tailed jackrabbits, but throughout the West, rabbit drives were definitely a thing where they would make like little fences and stuff and use terrain features to try to just flush rabbits into pinch points and then hunt them. So that would be going after jackrabbits and cottontails for that.
And then I guess sort of a follow-up, I mean, a little bit different. Mountain lions, are they at the top of the food chain? Do they eat rabbits in the Serene area?
I have to imagine that sometimes they do. Yeah. So a lot of our lions will go downhill and just on a walking migration to follow the deer herds, but some don't. And when they don't, then they've got to find other prey items to get them through the winter. And so then they'll turn to coyotes and other things like pets. And certainly rabbits. Rabbits are available. They're on top of the snow, and they're good size meal, and they're active through the winter. So they're pretty. I'm sure lots of rabbits get eaten by lions throughout California.
And then John followed up with his link to hunting in Nevada, and so I guess you could look into that at some other point in time.
Yeah, so I think white-tailed jackrabbits might be doing pretty well in certain parts of the state, but they're not doing great throughout much of their overall range. I mean, they go all the way to Iowa, and they've disappeared from lots of their former range. And one of the biggest concerns with white-tailed jackrabbits now is that they really live at these high places. So, changes due to climate change eventually could just squeeze them off the tops of the mountains, kind of like with the pika. And ski area development, telecommunications development, things like that can probably interfere with them a bit too. So we just don't really know exactly where they are, what they need, how they're doing. The good news is at Tahoe, we know that they're still around. When I in my other talk, I mentioned that when I started that study, they were believed to be totally extirpated from the region by Nevada Department of Wildlife and by the that was in the Lake Tahoe watershed assessment that the Forest Service put out. But it turns out they're still pretty much everywhere we thought they were, with the exception of desolation.
Nice. Well, I'm going to take just a couple more questions and then we can wrap it up. We had two more that came in that are pretty quick. Do you know if the rabbits taste the same, the different types? Have you eaten any?
I've eaten domestic rabbits. I haven't eaten any wild rabbits. I know that they are riddled with parasites often, and so not very popular with a lot of hunters for that reason. And that's all I know about it. I don't know how they taste. Yeah, I don't think jackrabbits are super popular game species. I feel my feeling is that cottontails might be a little better, and but like European hares are supposed to be pretty good. So I don't know.
And then, do you know if there are any mountain lions that are wintering in Serene area?
I don't know that. Yeah.
I have not seen. I typically see tracks like in the early winter. And then as it starts melting in the spring. I have personally not seen. And it doesn't mean they're not here. I just haven't seen any up here. In the dead of winter, but.
Yeah, a lot of times they can be kind of conspicuous when they are around because. Yep. I remember a few years ago there was one at Tunnel Creek over by Incline Village that was around. It was eating coyotes and stuff, and so it was just making a mess, and people were running into that when they were walking their dogs, and
Yeah.
it was causing a lot of concern, understandably, I guess.
Yeah. And then we had a question about our recent graduate opportunities. I'm actually going to bring Bryn in to be able to answer this on the Headwaters side. So yeah, what do you have at TINS for research opportunities? Do you guys have volunteers or young people that work?
Yeah, so we do a lot of citizen science. So there's different opportunities through the year depending on what you're interested in. If you want to just participate in some of our bird counts, we coordinate a bald eagle count, we do butterfly counts, we do some stuff with dragonflies. But like dedicated day to day, field tech positions, that just depends year to year. And right now we don't have anything available, unfortunately, with that. But next year we may. So it just depends. But if you've got some spare time and interest, give us a call. Maybe we can write a small grant and find something cool for you to do. I've been really wanting to get a committed citizen science project around yellow jackets going and yellow jacket monitoring. And I need somebody to help me with that.
Awesome. Then Bryn, if you want, our field work is a little bit different, but you can talk about what we have.
Yeah, so first we're always looking for volunteers. So we have a volunteer form you can fill out on our website. And those volunteer opportunities can range. And I will contact you when you fill the form out to give you more options. But we are always looking for part-time fieldwork assistants. So we do school programs all throughout Northern Nevada and Northern California. And we are looking for, either undergraduate students, recent graduates, or graduate students that have some field research experience to help us out with those field days that we do as part of our school programs. So I can put my email in the chat as well, and you can email me if you have experience or know of someone who has experience that would want to help out. And then we just posted a new job for a program assistant here in the Truckee Tahoe area, and that's on our website as well. And always looking to hire part-time field work.
Awesome. I'm going to bring back in Sandy and Alec as well, because I want to, start wrapping this up. And I just want to say that, with Headwaters, we are always looking for community collaboration, and we have a great one with Serene, and Will has been an awesome community partner. And so I think that it is a great way to engage, and inform the community by letting them know what's out there and what's happening. And these things happen through partnerships. And so, we definitely can't do this alone. Like, we do education stuff, but Will is out there also doing research and doing great education and outreach like this. And Serene has their stewardship committee, and they're looking to help inform their local community. So that's sort of how this all came about. And so, Sandy and Alec, do you have anything else you wanted to say about Serene or Headwaters collaboration?
I just want to say thank you so much. And I hope, Will, since you have shared your email, that's just a great, option or opportunity for people to reach out to you with specific questions, or even if they want to get more involved. And just thank you, and keep sending us information and ways to spread this great knowledge to our community. We're a little secret wealth of amazing environmental exciting things that are happening here. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to just thank you, Will, for the talk. It was really great, and also enjoyed your talk you did on Lunch for the Scientists. And I actually texted my son when you said that you haven't, last martin was seen in the area in 2018. His reply was, I haven't seen him. I didn't know we had martins in the area. So it's actually started with the Wolverines. Sorry, I guess it was 2018. He didn't realize there were Wolverines in the area. He's really into nature and ecology. But yeah, I'd like to also thank the SLOPA for working with Headwaters. I attended the bear talk we had this summer at one of our science camps, and it was really fascinating. We had A woman come out from the California Forest Department of Forestry, something like that. She's the bear liaison, and she gave a talk on bears in neighborhoods and stuff like that. And it's really interesting, especially seeing ice chests being torn apart by bears. So thank you, Slopa, for joining us today.
Yeah, and so Bryn, do you want to say a little bit more about future talks and camps and things?
Yeah, so we, in partnership with Serene Lakes, we offer 3 weeks of summer camp. And this year, they're all in July. And at the end of those weeks of camp, we have in-person talks, just like this one, where a local scientist or someone from the local community will come and give a talk about anything that they're interested in, that they feel they want to share with the community. And those are open to the public, so anyone is more than welcome to come and watch those talks. They're always super interesting. Last summer, we had the bear one, we had a fire talk, and we had a really interesting talk about ecology and beaver dams. So we're hoping to get some more interesting talks for this summer. And we have summer camps all over the place too. So we have more summer camps in Truckee, and then we have some overnight camps out at Weber Lake. And they're always super fun, and a good way to get the community involved in what we do.
And Bryn, I just want to echo that just for the Slopa community. The camp has already been posted on our website, on the calendar. So if people want to participate in the last day when you have a speaker, and I believe it's a 4-day camp, right? It ends on Thursday. So definitely just go to the Slopa website for more information. And again, if you all have more information you want to share, just let me know so I can post it to the community.
Yeah, and Will and Tins have some great summer camp opportunities around Truckee and throughout Tahoe Basin. So for all of your science needs, I think there's a lot of great options for kids out there, thankfully.
Yeah, we do have some backpacking camps in partnership with the Rim Trail too that some of the listeners might be interested in. But anyway, it's all on our website. You can find that. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Will and Tins and Slopa, for this amazing evening. I love when the community comes together for a great partnership so that everybody can learn more. So I appreciate your time. And I think with that, we can sign off.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody else for inviting me and letting me share the stuff that's a lot of fun for me. And hopefully you enjoyed it. So thanks.
Thank you. And reach out if you have any more questions, for Bryn or Will or me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.